From Washington, this is VOA News. I'm Dave DeForest reporting. French officials identify a third attacker. The attacker was killed during the Paris terrorist incident in November. Officials announced Wednesday that the attacker was from Strasbourg. He is believed to have traveled to Syria with a group of other people in late 2013. The suspect's name has not been officially released, but French media are identifying him as Fouad Mohamed-Aggad. U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter testified before the Senate Armed Forces Committee Wednesday and urged Turkey to do more to control its often porous border with Syria. Carter criticized Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states for being, in his words, preoccupied by the conflict in Yemen and not paying enough attention to the fight against the Islamic State group.
The international community, including our allies and partners, has to step up before another attack like Paris.
Ash Carter. Rwanda is set to vote next week on a constitutional amendment that will allow President Paul Kagame to run for a third term in 2017 and potentially to remain in power until 2034. The Rwandan government announced late Tuesday that the referendum will be held on December 17th for Rwandans living abroad and on December 18th for those living in Rwanda. The referendum is forecast to pass easily. The head of the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation says the two shooters in last week's California massacre were radicalized before they met online and started discussing jihad and martyrdom about 2 years ago. FBI Director James Comey told the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee Wednesday that the two were inspired by foreign terrorist groups. For more on that, take a look at our website, voanews.com. This is VOA News. U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch is criticizing European governments for limiting how intelligence agencies share counterterrorism information around the world. Speaking in London, Lynch called it particularly disappointing that the European Court of Justice recently struck down the so-called Safe Harbor Agreement that allowed U.S. companies to easily send customer data from the European Union to servers based across the Atlantic. The UN Committee Against Torture says torture and ill treatment are widespread in China and remain deeply entrenched in the country's criminal justice system. Lisa Schlein takes a look.
The group of 10 independent experts says a Chinese delegation which presented its case to the UN committee acknowledges torture is a big problem in China, but it says the delegation did not provide data on the extent and prevalence of this outlawed practice. The panel said China's delegation also did not provide information on how many people have died in custody, how many people are being held incommunicado in secret places of detention known as black jails, and how many cases of torture have been raised and investigated. Lisa Schlein, Geneva.
Tanzania's marked their country's Independence Day on Wednesday, not with a parade, but by cleaning the streets. President John Magufuli was one of several top officials who picked up trash around the capital, Dar es Salaam. It's part of a nationwide cleanup exercise. The newly elected president, who campaigned on promises to reduce corruption and waste, said last month he was canceling the traditional Independence Day festivities to save money. An overnight Taliban assault Tuesday on a key airport in southern Afghanistan killed 37 people and wounded 35. The violence continued into Wednesday. A group of at least 10 heavily armed suicide bombers wearing uniforms of Afghan security forces stormed the airfield in Kandahar. With time running out at the climate talks near Paris, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is urging nations to set aside differences and reach a strong agreement.
With just hours left to go to reach a climate deal, Secretary of State Kerry summed up his message in just a few words.
Our task is clear. Our moment is now. Let's get this job done.
Negotiators now have less than 2 days to reach an agreement aimed to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius or less over pre-industrial levels. Lisa Bryant, Paris.
Well, Time magazine has named German Chancellor Angela Merkel as its 2015 Person of the Year. It noted her leadership during the Syrian refugee crisis, the Greek bailout agreement, currency turmoil, and Russia's intervention in Ukraine. In Washington, I'm Dave DeForest.
That's the latest world news from VOA.